Hi, everybody. Ann Louise Gittleman here once again for the First Lady of Nutrition podcast. And of course, it is my pleasure to welcome a first-rate nutritional icon and innovator in the field of cannabis and CBD oil. His name is Dr. Stuart Titus, who not only has a unique background in health, but he himself has been a physiotherapist for over 15 years and has firsthand experience in the use of hemp oil products with Lyme's disease. So I'm so interested in exploring that with you. Welcome to First Lady of Nutrition, Dr. Titus.
Well, it's a great pleasure to be with you today. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Now, why did you get into CBD oil with your background in economics and health?
I had seen a great number of patients using cannabis, and this was back when I had my clinical practice from 1990 to 2010, and I saw a great number of athletes, particularly even some professional sport athletes, using cannabis to help control pain, decrease inflammation, help with sleep-related issues, and started attending medical cannabis symposiums and found out that there was really some science behind cannabis use as a medicine. I was just blown away and astounded. When a public company started in California back in March of 2009, it's the first public company in the US in the cannabis and industrial hemp space, I just became involved as an investor. But when this company changed gears in 2011, and we're talking about bringing a nutritional supplement form of cannabis to US and world markets that would be non-psychoactive, based in CBD rather than THC. I thought this may be one of the great dietary supplements of all time, possibly rivaling vitamin C, and thus I left my clinical practice, which I've been with for 20 years, to become involved in this new undertaking. And it's been fabulous to see the growth and development of this market. We brought our first nutritional supplement-based form of CBD products to US and world markets in the spring of 2012. So it's been 8 years now, and gosh, the world popularity in CBD is absolutely amazing.
It's amazing, and it's amazing to me to see how this has become the kind of the herb of the month, the herb of the year, perhaps the herb of the decade, if you can call it that. And I think it's going to rival vitamin C and vitamin D as being the bomb, as they say, because it has so many applications, not just for physiological health, but for mental health. Can you speak a little bit to the physiological health that it can impact?
Well, I think one of the great places to start is with a patent that's held by the US government. The research started back in 1999. The research team included Nobel Prize winning laureate Dr. Julius Axelrod from the US here, and this led to US patent number 6630507. It's titled Cannabinoids as Antioxidants and Neuroprotectants, and here it describes a wide range of physiological benefits. On the antioxidant, anti-inflammatory side, great potential benefit for all of your metabolic syndrome patients. This includes your heart disease and cardiovascular risk patients, diabetes, rheumatoid arthritis, anyone with an inflammatory marker. Basically, the anti-inflammatory properties of these cannabinoids, and particularly CBD, has really been able to help bring those numbers down into the more normal range. And of course, inflammation is the root cause of all disease. And the other side of the patent, talking about the neuroprotective capabilities to protect the central nervous system from these neurodegenerative conditions, things such as multiple sclerosis or Alzheimer's, Parkinson's disease, and now there's been additional study and research, and the FDA has actually approved an actual medicine to treat childhood epilepsy, and many parents are now also using CBD for autism because, again, it's just calming and relaxing the central nervous system of these children, making them a little bit more normal.
Do you think we're born with a CBD deficiency?
Well, certainly over the past 82 years, we've been very cannabinoid deficient. We had this unfortunate passage of the Marijuana Tax Act back in 1937, and over the following 3+ generations, cannabis is kind of removed from our diet. Hemp and hemp seed used to be a very staple food in the country. And
Yes.
by removing this, not only from our diets, but also the diets of our animals, cattle, chicken, etc., we've all throughout the society become cannabinoid deficient. There's a very interesting development in the medical community about this, what's called clinical endocannabinoid deficiency syndrome. That's really taking on a lot more credence as more and more study comes in. But yes, I believe most of us are cannabinoid deficient, and simply by supplementing with about 50 milligrams of non-psychoactive cannabinoids on a daily basis, many people are seeing tremendous improvements in overall levels of health and wellness. We're just feeding our body what it's really naturally needing.
Lovely. And what fascinated me about your bio is the fact that you had personal experience with hemp oil products such as the CBD oil. Because was it a personal issue that you had with Lyme disease, or was this your clients?
No, it was really my own personal issue, and certainly this is a terrible nerve-related disorder, particularly when it gets into the central nervous system and your cerebrospinal fluid, like it did with me. I was extremely debilitated. I mean, it was like I aged 100 years overnight. It was unbelievable level of pain, discomfort, the muscular spasms, uncontrollable muscle twitching at nighttime when I was trying to sleep. Just a horrible experience. And for whatever reason, it just must have been destiny, but I was just in the right place at the right time to have been part of this CBD evolution. And I'll never forget my first night, our first product, a 25 milligram capsule of CBD. And I slept without one muscle twitch. And this was the first time in 2 years I had a good, full, restful night of sleep. And then over the following 18 months, I was able to overcome a significant amount of the challenges I had, and have come back to a very good state of health at this time.
Wonderful. I mean, when there's a vested interest in health as you have, it just makes everything else that you do that more authentic. So I'm so glad that you're better, cured perhaps. You're certainly controlling whatever has gone on in your system. And beyond the mental health applications, is there any other arena in terms of autoimmune illness where you think CBD oil comes into play?
Well, it does seem to have tremendous immune boosting properties. Certainly this internal endogenous cannabinoid system that's characteristic of all of us humans. In fact, all mammalian creatures have this internal endogenous cannabinoid system. And certainly by supplementing this system, which is the largest self-regulatory system in the human body, there are many great physiological benefits. Certainly, this system regulates the balance within us, what in medicine you might call a homeostasis, and this has tremendous implication for the body's immune system and immune defenses. There have been a lot of terrific studies in terms of CBD and its potential antibacterial effects. Certainly, there's some early stage research, even a nice article in the street.com, I believe it was, showing that some very early stage research out of Canada showing a benefit of cannabis, and particularly CBD part of cannabis, to help with the situation that's currently going on in the world. It does seem that cannabinoids, and particularly CBD, does block coronavirus pathways into cells, according to this article that was just out yesterday.
Well, that's pretty fascinating, pretty current, pretty urgent information. And I understand, much to my amazement, that there is an enormous body of research about the cannabinoid system and all of the cannabis-related studies. Where would people be able to find all this research? Do you have a particular website you can refer us to?
We have a wonderful website. It's a nonprofit group called Echo Connection, and ECHO, echoconnection.org, has a tremendous amount of research that is very condition specific. Obviously, people can also search the National Institutes of Health library or PubMed, which many of these studies are available online. Some unfortunately require a fee, but the National Institutes of Health now has over 10,000 studies on the endocannabinoid system. And there are probably another 2,200 studies that mention endocannabinoid right in the title of that particular study. So there's been a lot of research. A lot of it's been very early stage, either petri dish models or animal models. Not as much human study and research, but certainly the early research shows some tremendous physiological benefits.
Do you think that everybody, including infants and children, should be taking some sort of cannabinoid supplement?
I believe so, for sure. Yes, certainly to support this large self-regulatory system. It's interesting to see that in childhood development and childbirth, this endocannabinoid system is present from about day 16 of gestation. It's intimately involved in the development of the fetus and the central nervous system. In fact, mother's breast milk, the first food that the mother feeds the child, is very cannabinoid rich. And we've seen many uh, moms go through a pregnancy actually using small amounts of CBD and having wonderful experience with childbirth, and their children have been on CBD right from the very outset and doing extraordinarily well in terms of development, being disease-free, etc. So yes, I really think these are vital and essential nutrients that we can help use to support our bodies throughout our entire lives. I mean, gosh, I wish I would have had CBD back when I was a child. It wasn't until I was in my 50s that I found it, and it had some amazing benefit. But gosh, if I'd have had this as a child, and maybe 2 or 3 generations from now, when the children grow up and have their children, et cetera, just think how amazing this world's going to be with a world of cannabinoid sufficient individuals.
So tell me about your involvement in the industry itself. I know that you're involved in the medical marijuana. It's a public traded company, if I'm not mistaken.
We're the parent company of Canaway. I've certainly had a nice opportunity to become the chief executive officer as of March 2015. So it's been a great year, but certainly I've been involved with the company since its outset, and just as an investor. Certainly in terms of the industry, moved out to California to help pioneer this hemp CBD industry. And I think we've done some wonderful things in the space since then. We've started several other public companies. We currently have 2 pharmaceutical development companies that we're very well involved with. And I've been very excited about the research, the potential benefits for mankind, not only in terms of a pharmaceutical medicine, but also just as an everyday dietary supplement to help improve health and wellness. It's been great to see the growth in the industry over the years. In 2014, a couple of years after we really started going with CBD, we decided to start this Canaway group, which is a direct sales or a multi-level marketing channel. And we've now been able to pioneer markets, not only all 50 US states here, but also throughout the European community, countries such as Russia, now moving over into Asia with Japan and Vietnam. Hopefully will come online very soon. So to see the international expansion and the international acceptance of these cannabinoids, and to hear some of the anecdotal stories of people returning health and wellness, it's been extremely gratifying.
Can you share some of those anecdotal stories? I know my listeners get very impassioned and very excited and very engaged when they hear real life, true life stories of people just like you and me that have found hope and healing using a natural supplement such as the CBD oil.
Well, certainly, and of course, since we have a public for-profit company, I personally am not able to speak as much about some of the stories and testimony, or even my own bit of success, as I would normally like to. But we have other groups. You can search our media, press, and all. We see some wonderful stories about individuals who've had great benefit from our products. Certainly, we have our Echo Connection. .org, and we currently servicing well over 100 families with regular product. There's some great stories up on Echo Connection, and certainly the internet is filled with many other wonderful stories. I think one of the best stories I've seen, though, actually came from the country of Brazil. And just as we were starting Canaway in April of 2014, an opportunity came to us unbeknownst from another part of the world. It seemed that a family in the US had a child with a very difficult type of epilepsy, genetically inherited, and there's a fairly rare population of this type of epilepsy in the world. At the time, maybe only a couple of hundred, 300-400 patients with this. Now today, it's a little bit more popular, but one family had great results by using our product out of Dallas, Texas. They posted on Facebook the success. And there was a mother in the country of Brazil with a child with the same type of epilepsy. and saw that there was some great benefit by CBD products. And so they tried to, they actually had relatives here in the US who purchased some products from us. This is all unbeknownst to us, but had stuffed it in an animal, if you know, stuffed animal, and just kind of hidden it so it would get through Customs and Border Patrol. It
My
went
gosh.
down to Brazil. The family used it with the daughter, who was having about 300 seizure episodes per day.
Uh,
And the seizures came to nearly a stop.
uh,
It was absolutely remarkable. However, the parents ran out of product fairly quickly, so they tried to order from us directly, and it got stopped by Customs and Border Patrol once we sent it down to Brazil, of course. And it was something that the Customs and Border Patrol destroyed the product. Well, of course, the seizure episodes started to come back with the child, and it was interesting to see the Brazilian social media, which is very advanced. This story went viral throughout the country. And very, very quickly, within 3 days, the regulatory authority out of Brazil, known as Anvisa, it's their version of the FDA, ruled that this would be totally inhumanitarian for us to keep this product from this child. And of course, she'd been on all kind of medicine, 12 different pharmaceutical meds, I believe, and other therapies to try to control the seizures, and nothing was working. And sure enough, our product seemed to work well, and the government then of Brazil allowed for a special import permit for us. And for the past 6 years, we've now been successfully able to market products through other parents in the country of Brazil, thanks to the great efforts of this one family and their daughter to stand up and certainly, risking the rest of their lives in jail because that's where the regulations were at the time. But this was able to change the dialogue in the country of Brazil, and now CBD is approved by doctor prescription. We have a wonderful doctor network. We give regular medical cannabis and CBD symposiums in the country. It's been absolutely phenomenal to see how progressive this country and how humanitarian this country is. If pharmaceuticals aren't working, here's a more natural solution, and they'll approve it. Over time, they've actually reimbursed in the government healthcare system for it. So people who can't afford the product necessarily can still get the benefit as long as the doctor prescribes it.
so then my question to you is, what makes your CBD oil different than any other CBD oil on the market? Why are you heads and shoulders above the rest?
Well, we're very excited about our sourcing. We've been sourcing from the European community since really we started our endeavors over there back in 2007. And here they grow true hemp, which certainly has great industrial uses, but certainly the end crop will have 0.3% or less THC. And what that means for us is that when we do our extractions and final formulations, it requires minimal processing in order to produce an end product. Thus, it preserves a great amount of these entourage botanicals, your natural botanical compounds that are already in the hemp plant or the cannabis plant itself. This includes things such as terpenoids, flavonoids, your trace amount of cannabinoids, your plant waxes, chlorophyll, and this really produces a wonderful magnified effect that we call the entourage effect. Just all these chemical components working together synergistically, and just the way Mother Nature has grown this plant. There are many other progressive marijuana growers now here in the U.S., for example, who are growing a high concentration of CBD in their marijuana crop, and then they're processing it down so they can separate out the THC from the CBD. And this, of course, requires much more in the way of processing in order to do that. And the more processing and refining that you do, the more of these entourage botanicals that you lose. So many products today are just really isolated forms of CBD. In fact, the pharmaceutically developed version of CBD itself is an isolated, refined, semi-synthetic version of CBD, and it's mixed with a sesame oil, and certainly they're getting a certain amount of results, but it's very interesting to see that the natural botanical product with its full spectrum botanicals tends to get and confer even greater physiological benefits without any of the negative, unwanted, harmful side effects of the pharmaceutical products. So certainly we're quite excited about, having been in this industry for 8 years now, producing and selling marketing products all from the same source. And, obviously over time, the soil and conditions of this European community have really done very well to support the hemp plant. Over time, certainly here in America, we're just planting our first legal hemp crop this year by the USDA's program. And over time, potentially, we'll have a wonderful hemp here from the US to potentially source. But nonetheless, we've been just at this for so long, still continue with our original sourcing, even though we could source perhaps cheaper CBD here from the US. We really want to stick with the full spectrum entourage botanicals that really confer the great health and wellness benefits that we've been able to achieve.
So people can take CBD oil as a supplement. It's in pills, it's in soft gels, I imagine it's in liquid form. How else can people absorb this? Through a salve, topically through the skin? What about skincare products? I'm just thinking of all the ramifications of this.
Yes, there are a tremendous amount of nice delivery systems and methods of taking CBD. Certainly, the topical application you were just mentioning is becoming very, very popular. Certainly, to get cannabinoids right in more directly to areas, problem areas where it's needed. Tremendous network of these cannabinoid receptors that exist throughout the body, even in the endocannabinoid system, and other receptor sites that are not necessarily part of the endocannabinoid system are also very accepting of these cannabinoids. We also offer, our company does, I think we're one of the few, maybe the only company that still continue with our original products, and they come in an oral applicator form. So it's like a dark colored toothpaste type of application that really is more directly extracted from the hemp plant itself. So it really has a great profile of these entourage botanicals. And those are some of our very favorite and top selling products. We have 3 different forms of the oral applicators, a bunch of different liquid products mixed with a MCT oil, like a medium chain triglyceride, or a coconut oil. And many parents find that very easy to feed to their children on a spoon. It has a very benign taste. Certainly, the capsules and tinctures are nice ways to absorb cannabinoids. And the vaporization, which, unfortunately, there were some problems with some of the THC vape products going back about a year or so ago, with synthetic vitamin C acetate being used to cut the oil. And unfortunately, that synthetic vitamin C product was conferring some unwanted health effects to individuals. But still, the vape delivery, getting it more directly into the cardiopulmonary system, has been a wonderful delivery method for many individuals. And we are very much part, especially in the European community, we sell a lot of vape products, and that's a wonderful delivery for many individuals.
So what do you see the future holding for the CBD oil industry?
Well, I think the future is extremely bright. I think everything is still fairly much at the ground floor level. Of course, the industry itself is going through its trials and tribulations. We're working with our US FDA to carve out a specific pathway for CBD to be approved as a dietary supplement here in the US, as well as a food ingredient. Currently, the FDA is wanting to see a little bit more safety data, because the only real clinical data that they have comes from the pharmaceutical company. And of course, as I mentioned earlier in the podcast, that the pharmaceutically developed version of CBD is a semi-synthetic, and thus it confers some toxic liver side effects, elevated liver enzymes of ALT, AST, ALP, and elevated bilirubin levels. Now, the pharmaceutical group is also giving very large doses of CBD to their young children. I mean, young children getting 400 to 700 milligrams of CBD daily.
Wow.
Many children on a more natural botanical product, even with some fairly significant health challenges, 25 to 50 milligrams has been quite effective for many of these young children. And certainly we are not seeing, because it's a more natural botanical product, any of the toxic liver side effects. Certainly myself personally, I've been on CBD every day now for the past 8 years, and my liver enzyme levels are all in the normal, the lower end of the normal range. So the long-term use of CBD, at least for me, has been very safe, and we look forward to, showing and demonstrating this to the FDA with maybe a 1,000-patient study coming up in the near future.
So besides the immunosuppressive issues that are so rampant today with people, and the rise of autism and Lyme's disease and so on and so forth, are there any other applications that we may not recognize that CBD oil would be effective for?
Well, I think, if you read the, U.S. government patent and you look at some of the research, it's very, very interesting to see that they do talk a little bit about some of the anti-aging benefits. Certainly, there's been a good amount of research and things that are done on animals like lab rats, for example. But this concept of neurogenesis, which again has only been proven out in these laboratory animals, but feeding CBD to these lab animals actually was able to help regenerate new brain cells, new nerves and neurological pathways in these animals. And certainly if this can be proven out in humans, this neurogenesis concept, well, this could be the veritable fountain of youth, because you keep your central nervous system healthy and active, and that's going to have a peripheral effect on many of the other systems of the body, your muscular system, your skeletal system, etc. And I certainly, after suffering my health challenges, I really have to say the anti-aging benefits. I feel very healthy, very fit, trim, certainly very active in terms of exercise and the rest. Travel the world, keep a very busy schedule, or at least when things were normal. I was traveling the world before this unfortunate virus situation, and lecturing in people's doctors groups, etc. So certainly the amazing experience I've had personally. I really have to believe there's some absolutely incredible benefits that we might not recognize for 20, 30, 40 years down the road. But certainly having seen the incredible changes in my overall health, I mean, I can't imagine not having CBD for a day.
Interesting. So do you see any other arenas in the healthcare industry that would be most, or seem to be most open to the use of CBD oil? Psychiatry, psychology, physiotherapy, anti-aging? Have we missed any particular arena?
Well, there certainly are some other areas we can talk about and discuss in terms of psychiatry or addiction type of situation. Obviously, we've had this unfortunate opioid situation in the U.S., which some people are drug users and abusers, etc. But unfortunately, many people who come into the opioid situation are just normal, healthy, active, maybe church-going people. And they might have a surgery or something, and the doctor might prescribe opioids. Well, gosh, 3, 4, 5 days on opioids, and many of these, people just become addicted. And it's just physiological process that goes on within their bodies. And unfortunately, it's very easy to overdose with opioids. And this, has caused a tremendous, bit of death and destruction in the United States. It's very interesting to see that cannabinoids do have some very interesting effect on certain receptor sites, particularly your TRPV1 receptors, as we call it, that are pain receptors and just help to decrease and dampen pain. Anecdotally, we see a lot of people using cannabis and, of course, CBD to help control pain. But it's interesting to also note no one has ever died from an overdose of natural botanical cannabis or CBD, certainly, because your receptor sites for your cannabinoids are in a much different location than they are for the opioid receptors. The opioid receptors are basically back in the brainstem near the basal ganglia, and right in this very same area, you have the body's autonomic breathing reflex. We don't really think much about our breathing. We go to sleep at night. We continue to breathe. But what happens when you overdose with opioids, because the sensation and the stimulation is so intense right at the center, right where the opioid receptors are, and its proximity to this autonomic breathing reflex, that it actually cuts off, it shuts off this autonomic natural reflex within us. And the opioid overdose patients just simply forget to breathe, and they die of asphyxiation.
My goodness.
So certainly there's a great answer right there. Of course, there's a lot of what we call politics of healing that are preventing this and continuing the unfortunate opioid saga throughout our country. But when you look at the little picture chart, one picture could be worth 1,000 words. And I wish I was able to show a couple of pictures to you here where the cannabinoid receptors are and the opioid receptors. It would just make perfect sense. But certainly there are great answers here. And it does seem that not only with opioids, but also other types of addictive personality disorders, things such as the addiction to cocaine, methamphetamine, etc. Cannabinoids, and particularly CBD, does seem to have a peripheral effect on some of these brain receptor sites that tend to cut off the body's reward mechanism. And just very, very interested in some of the future and potential of research here to get these cannabinoids more into these drug addiction and drug recovery programs that are out. And we're quite excited about some of the early findings and research. I think there are several articles I could potentially point you to about drug addiction and how these cannabinoids really are making a difference for many individuals.
Totally fascinating. Are any of your companies engaged in any particular type of research or clinical study as we speak?
Well, our two pharmaceutical development partners certainly are, and of course there are many other companies out there researching cannabinoids. Our one company, Canalife Inc., is recently public, KLFE. They have a couple of indications for use on this U.S. government patent I was mentioning. They have an indication for use to develop a cannabinoid-based medicine to treat what we call hepatic encephalopathy. It's a liver-brain disorder brought about by long-term opioid use or excess alcohol abuse. But the neuroprotective properties, not only for the brain, but also for the liver cells with cannabinoids. Certainly the NIH believes that there's some potential there, and that's awarded a patent application for Canalife for that particular indication. The second indication Canalife has is to develop a cannabinoid-based medicine to treat what we call CTE, or chronic traumatic encephalopathy, traumatic brain injury, which is kind of the industrial disease of the National Football League,
Yes,
and
yes, yes.
the industrial disease of the National Hockey League as well. And certainly the neuroprotective capabilities of cannabinoids, it does seem the NIH believes that there is a good possibility here. And so they've also awarded another patent to Canalife for that particular application. They've got a nice proprietary molecule. We're very excited about some of their early stage study and research showing some great potential benefit.
So I'm finding all this totally engaging, totally fascinating. I'm just so impressed with the fact that you yourself were a healthcare practitioner. So you're really engaged in the whole business of health on so many levels. And I know that if people look at echoconnections.org, they'll find a plethora of new research studies. It's one of the most comprehensive websites that I've seen, as a matter of fact, in terms of all the studies that are offered. And I'm going to also post a particular website where people who may want to become involved with these particular products can do so as a preferred customer. Would that be all right with you?
Oh, that'd be absolutely fabulous. Yeah, yes, I have some friends who actually would love to participate. So we look forward to getting onto the website and signing up for some products, especially some of the new products that we've been able to develop.
Lovely. So I want to thank you so much, Dr. Stuart Titus. Thank you so much for being my esteemed and honored guest for the First Lady of Nutrition podcast. And I will welcome all of our listeners to come back next time for another episode of First Lady of Nutrition. Goodbye for now.